I still don't drive alone at night anymore. Not after what happened on Route 16. Even now, years later, I avoid backroads after dark. If I'm driving somewhere late, I take highways with lights and traffic. I don't care if it adds an extra hour to the trip. Because some roads feel wrong after midnight. And Route 16 is one of them. It started during a storm. I had just finished a late shift at work and was heading home around 11:40 p.m. The weather had been bad all evening, but by the time I got onto Route 16, the rain became violent. The kind of rain where your windshield wipers stop helping. Thunder shook the sky every few minutes, and the road ahead looked almost completely black except when lightning flashed through the trees. There weren't many cars out. Actually, after a while, there were none. Just me. And the storm. I remember thinking about pulling over somewhere, but there was nothing around except woods and empty road. No gas stations. No restaurants. No lights anywhere. Then I saw him. An older man standing on the side of the road. He wore a dark coat and held one arm out slightly, not aggressively hitchhiking, just enough to get attention. At first, I drove past him. I barely even slowed down. But then guilt hit me almost immediately. The rain was freezing, and the guy looked old. Maybe 60 or 70. I kept imagining what would happen if nobody stopped for him. So after maybe 30 seconds, I sighed and turned the car around. That decision changed everything. When I pulled up beside him, he opened the passenger door slowly and climbed inside. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Wet dirt. Not normal mud. It smelled deeper somehow. Like old soil after heavy rain. "Thanks," he said quietly. His voice sounded rough. Like he hadn't used it much recently. "No problem," I replied. "Car trouble?" He closed the door carefully. Then looked straight ahead through the windshield. "I've been trying to get home." Something about the way he said it felt strange. Not creepy at first. Just off. I glanced at him briefly while driving. His clothes looked old-fashioned. Not extremely old, but outdated enough to stand out. Dark coat. Plain shirt. Heavy boots covered in mud. Water dripped steadily from his sleeves onto the floor mat. "You from around here?" I asked. A pause. Then, "I used to be." Thunder cracked loudly overhead. The old man didn't react. Most people jump at thunder that loud. He just kept staring forward. I tried another question. "So where exactly are you headed?" He slowly turned toward me. And smiled slightly. "The lake road." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. That road led near where I grew up. I hadn't mentioned that. "Lot of people live near the lake," I said carefully. "Yes," he replied softly. "You used to fish there with your father." My stomach dropped instantly. I looked at him fully this time. "How do you know that?" The man's smile faded slightly. "You were young," he said. "Maybe 10. Every hair on my arm stood up. Because he was right. My dad used to take me fishing at the lake when I was a kid. But there was no way this stranger should have known that. I laughed nervously, trying to force the tension away. "Maybe you knew my dad?" The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked out into the storm. "The blue house burned eventually," he said quietly. My chest tightened hard. Because that was true too. Our old house near the lake had burned down after an electrical fire years ago. Nobody talked about it much anymore. I felt genuinely nervous now. "How do you know all this?" I asked. He finally looked at me again. And there was something wrong with his eyes. Not physically. They just looked distant. Like he was remembering something from very far away. "You shouldn't have stopped tonight," he said softly. Lightning flashed across the road ahead. For half a second, the forest outside lit up bright white. And I swear, I saw people standing between the trees. Dozens of them. Watching the road. The darkness returned instantly. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. "What the hell?" I whispered. The old man remained calm. Then suddenly, my GPS screen turned black. Static crackled through the speakers. The radio changed by itself. At first, it sounded like random noise. Then voices. Low. Whispering. Too many voices speaking at once. I reached to turn it off. But before I touched the knob, one clear sentence came through the speakers. He stopped this time. I froze. The old man slowly nodded to himself, almost like he expected it. I shut the radio off immediately. Silence filled the car except for rain hitting the windshield. Then I noticed something else. The road looked familiar. Too familiar. I frowned and looked ahead harder. A road sign passed through my headlights, and my stomach dropped, because it showed the name of a town I had already left nearly an hour earlier. "That's impossible," I whispered. I checked my mirrors. Nothing but darkness behind us. I looked at the GPS again. No signal. No map. Just static. The old man spoke quietly beside me. "You missed your turn." "I didn't miss anything," I snapped. But deep down, panic was already building, because I knew that sign shouldn't have been there. I kept driving faster. The rain somehow got heavier. The road ahead looked endless now. No intersections. No lights. Nothing. Then the old man said something that made my blood run cold. "You passed me before." I looked at him. "What?" "The first time," he said softly. "You kept driving." My chest tightened. "What are you talking about?" He ignored the question. "You looked at me," he continued. "But you didn't stop." I shook my head immediately. "No. I've never seen you before tonight." The old man turned slowly toward me and smiled. Not threatening. Not angry. Just sad. "Yes," he whispered. "You have." And suddenly, I remembered. A flash in my head. Driving this same road years ago. Rain. Storm. And an old man standing by the roadside. I had passed him without stopping. My stomach twisted violently. "No," I whispered. The old man looked forward again. "You were the last car." Lightning flashed again. And this time, I saw him, standing farther down the road ahead. The same old man, waiting in the rain, while the version beside me still sat in the passenger seat. I slammed the brakes so hard the car skidded sideways. My breathing became uncontrollable. "No, no, no." The old man beside me spoke softly. "You weren't supposed to come back here." I looked toward him and nearly screamed. His skin looked wrong now. Pale. Wet. Like waterlogged paper. Mud dripped from his sleeves onto the seat. And his eyes looked completely black. Then the storm stopped instantly. No rain. No thunder. Nothing. Complete silence. The man standing on the road ahead disappeared. And when I turned back toward the passenger seat, it was empty. The door was still closed, but the seat was soaked with muddy water. I sat there shaking for several seconds before finally noticing something written across the fogged passenger window. 4 words. Written slowly from the inside. "You should have kept driving." I wasn't supposed to take that road. That's the part that still bothers me the most. If my GPS hadn't rerouted me because of traffic, none of this would have happened. I was driving home from visiting a friend in another town. It was late, around 1:30 in the morning, and I was already tired. The main highway had been closed because of an accident, so my GPS sent me through a long backroad route I had never driven before. At first, it didn't feel strange. Just empty. No houses. No gas stations. No other cars. Only forest on both sides of the road. The deeper I drove, the darker it got. And I started noticing something weird. No animals. Usually on roads like that, you see deer or raccoons crossing at night. But the woods beside the road looked completely dead. No movement. No sound. Nothing. About 20 minutes into the drive, I saw the streetlight. One single street light in the middle of nowhere. No buildings around it. No intersection. Just a tall light pole beside the road. And standing underneath it was a woman. At first, I thought maybe her car broke down nearby. She wore a long gray coat and stood perfectly still with her head lowered. I slowed down slightly. My headlights swept across her, but she didn't react at all. Didn't wave. Didn't look up. Just stood there. Something about it immediately felt wrong. I remember gripping the steering wheel tighter as I drove past. And right as my car passed the streetlight, she looked at me. I wish she hadn't, because her face looked completely normal. Except for her eyes. They looked too dark. Not black. Just empty. Like there was nothing behind them. I looked away instantly and kept driving. "Don't stop," I muttered to myself. I checked my mirror a few seconds later. The streetlight was still visible behind me. But the woman wasn't there anymore. My stomach tightened. I looked harder. Nothing. Then my headlights flashed over something ahead on the road. A figure. Standing in the middle of my lane. I slammed the brakes so hard the car skidded sideways slightly. It was her. The same woman. At least 50 feet ahead of where she should have been. Standing completely still. I stared at her through the windshield, my breathing getting faster. "How did she get there?" I whispered. There was no way. I had only looked away for maybe 5 seconds. No person could move that fast. Then she slowly lifted one arm and pointed toward the passenger seat beside me. My blood went cold instantly. Because someone was sitting there. I hadn't noticed them before. A man. Pale. Smiling. I screamed and jerked the wheel violently. The car slid off the road and slammed into a ditch. For a few seconds, everything went blurry. When I looked back into the passenger seat, it was empty. I grabbed my phone immediately. No signal. Of course. My breathing sounded too loud inside the car. I looked toward the road again. The woman was gone. I thought about staying in the car until morning. But then, 3 soft knocks hit my driver's side window. Tap. 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 I turned slowly. And she was standing inches from the glass. Smiling.